There are 4 words that are key in Genesis 1 that we're going to go through and see, why do I have quotes on the word created? And maybe why don't I have quotes on all 4 of these? I'm going to break these down for you. I'm going to look at the Hebrew. I'm going to look at all the context. There's a lot to get into in verse 1, but I've discovered that whatever Genesis 1 is talking about, the whole chapter, they either knew as much as we do today, or it was a divine revelation, or a complete coincidence. But who wants coincidence? That's not fun. So we'll look at the other 2. Here we go. We're going to dive in. Don't forget to check out my sponsor, Super Green, at Super Green Lawn Care on YouTube and X. Links are below. All your lawn care needs, weeds. What are the secrets to having a nice green lawn? And no, you don't have to hire him. He will give you all the information you need for El Fribo, as Rush used to say, on his YouTube channel. Very easy, simple steps, guaranteed to green your lawn. Absolute 100% guarantee. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That is the opening statement of Genesis 1. I spent many years studying Genesis 1. I spent 5 months studying Hebrew so I could understand the words better. I could read it and recite it in Hebrew. Barashit bara Elohim et shamayim wa et che'eretz. If I had the writing before me, I could read the rest of it. Don't necessarily have that memorized, but I would say it's slower from memory. Wa che'eretz chayet tohu wabohu is the second verse. Anyway, enough of showing off. The approach of Genesis 1 is important. You could approach it from a mystical, spiritual, revelatory view. That's how I approached Genesis 1. I assumed it was a revelation from God to somebody. And that was an assumption. The author doesn't say this is written by a direct divine revelation. So I just started with that premise. I'm like, if this is, then this is going to mirror what we understand about nature. And if it's wrong, either our understanding of the text is wrong or our understanding of nature is wrong. And we've gotten nature wrong for thousands of years, so we're still learning. We collectively, cosmologists, etc. You can look at it culturally, and what did the writers of their time believe? Was there a dome theory of cosmology? You can look at it historically. Who is the author, most likely? What was the point of their writing, literarily? Michael Heiser, who's a Hebrew scholar, says that this was taking the modern-day cosmology and kind of combating against multiple gods, but also Elohim is plural, but used singularly, so there's a little nuance there. And strict looking, what is most useful is looking at the text and seeing how the words are used. And I think that's going to be the most useful to you when especially this word created, because we assume it's ex nihilo. Well, guess what? That is Latin, and Genesis was not written in Latin. So this idea that God created out of nothing, ex nihilo, is literally created out of nothing. It's a fabricated doctrine. And initially I rejected it outright because it's not indicating anywhere in chapter 1 that God created anything out of nothing. Everything comes from something else. And it starts with the waters. But that's in verse 2. I love that verse because there's so much there. It's a beautiful and eccentric, enigmatic verse. But this word bara, created, is only used 3 times in the text. It's used at the top, and it's used on day 5 with the creatures of the sea, and then it's used with man. And it's used along with created and made. Let us make man in our image. And so God created them male and female. And based on its context, but also if you look at bara in the Hebrew, means to fatten up, to expand. Though the way I would use define this word is to bring to its fullest potential. And there's a reason why it's used on day 5 and 6, because on day 5 it's talking about birds and sea creatures. Whales are the largest creatures ever known to have lived. That is the fullest extent of human flesh, or of flesh. Birds fly in the air. That is the furthest extent of living beings on the planet vertically. And mankind is the fullest extent of flesh and intelligence and ability. So when it says, in the beginning, God created, I see that God brought to its fullest potential the heaven and the earth. Now, what is God? The word in Hebrew is Elohim, and that is a plural. El meaning is the word we have for God, but it's an aleph and a lamed, that is power and direction, and Him is the plural form for that. And created, bara, we already talked about that. That's a bet, a resh, and an aleph. And so that's power, is structure. The chief in structure and power, if you wanted to break those down, but I don't want to get too much into Hebrew. And then and then heaven is shemayim. Sometimes you just can't avoid the Hebrew. Shemayim is the word mayim, which means water, with a sheen, and the sheen means to destroy or separate. So if you understand Hebrew, you look at the word shemayim and you can see it is the destruction or separation of water. And what does heaven, how does heaven show up? Well, the rachia, which is the expanse or the firmament, is to separate the waters. And separate and destroy are kind of synonyms, because if you separate something, you have created 2 different things, and so you destroy what was. So, and heaven, of course, represents space. Space is what separates all things, which would indicate that all things is the word that is started off used as water. But it doesn't say water first here in the opening. It says earth, aretz in Hebrew. And I can put all that. I've done that before, but I just wanted to revisit this and go over this stuff, because this stuff excites me. And aretz is the end of energy. That's what the Hebrew suggests. It's an aleph, resh, and tzodeh. And the tzodeh is the end of a path. That would be the last letter. And I could put that up in here, but I've done that before, and I'm just kind of going back to these different things, because in the beginning also, Barashit has the word bara in it. It's the apex. Barashit is the beginning of separation, because the sheen is separation, and the tav is a point. It's an intersection. So the main thing I want to look at here is there are 4 main elements. You could say 5. Actually, there is 5. Barashit, bara, Elohim, it, hishamayim wa'et haaretz. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. That's 5. You'll see the theme of 5 all over Genesis 1. You'll see 5s everywhere. And it just so happens that the Tanakh has 5 books in it. So whoever wrote Genesis and then eventually all the other stuff, or put those together, really liked the number 5. And that just happens to be how many expenditures are on our hands. I would say finger, but then somebody would be like, oh, technically that's a thumb, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I don't know when I'm going to do the next one, because I'm going to do a bunch of different things here. But this is the beginning. Tell me what you think. Is it off? Because how you understand this matters. If you think heaven represents just the sky, and space didn't show up until verse 4, or verse 14, the 4th day, I think you're missing something. And if you think Earth means planet, that's definitely not what it means. Not at all. And there's no place in this verse, in this chapter, where Earth means a planet. It might mean land. You could say, well, strictly speaking, it's the land. But I think the land represents all of matter. And you have this evolution, sorry to use that term, some people are allergic to that, but it is a development of water into solid, or something that is even more. So this is more in verse 2. The earth was without form and void. I'll talk about that in the next video.